Annyeong hash imnika. Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. So my name, as you know, is Tom Palmer, and I've worked in reader development in the UK for many years, and I'm also an author of children's books. But I'm going to speak now about an overview of reader development in the UK, some of the major projects that have happened over the last 20 years. The PowerPoint notes that you have are slightly different from the PowerPoint on there, and that's my fault, so I'm sorry for that. Right. Right. So first of all, really, I should try and explain what the idea of reader development in the UK is. So I'll just read these two definitions out. The two definitions are by major organisations in the UK who deliver reader development. Opening the Book said, reader development builds the audience for literature by moving readers beyond loyalty to individual writers, helping them to develop the confidence to try something new. And try something new was sort of the main philosophy behind reader development in the early days in the UK. The Reading Agency, which is a major charity in the UK which delivers a range of activities to do with reader development, define reader development as work that intervenes to expand people's reading horizons, often by connecting people to each other to share reading experiences. They're two official definitions on their website, but I would also add, for me, and with my involvement in reader development over the last few years, I would add that it's also about not just trying to encourage established readers to read more broadly, but to encourage non-readers to begin reading. I was not a reader until I was 17 years old, and what encouraged me to read was my mother getting me to read, in particular about my passion for football. So she got me reading newspaper reports, magazines and books about football. And in a way, my mother worked reader development on me and made me into someone who loved reading and then became an author. So I would also add that to the definition. Right. The reader development kind of comes down to, we've got to try to work out why people read. In the UK, these are the reasons that people choose to read. To learn, to read for pleasure, to enjoy reading, to enhance your life in a number of ways, be it academic or to do with having more empathy for other people. But also to talk to other people about books. Over lunch we've been discussing different books, and it's pleasurable to have read the same book as someone else and to discuss it with them. They are the definitions behind reader development, behind reading. But in reader development in the early years in the UK wanted to push the idea of just reading for pleasure, not reading to learn or to improve yourself. It was very much for enjoying. It was a social thing. It was a personal, not a personal improvement thing, just a personal pleasure, reading for pleasure. As you'll see in the examples I give later on, that has changed somewhat, and there is more social purpose behind reader development now. So reader development's aims in the beginning were for people to enjoy new varieties of books. I was in a reading group about 15 years ago, a group of people who met and talked about reading together. I'd never read crime fiction before, and one of the books we had to read was a crime fiction novel. And because I enjoyed it so much, I probably read more crime fiction now than anything else. So reader development expanded my reading outlook hugely. To challenge what reading is for, that's going back to the idea that reading doesn't have to be to improve your lives or to educate yourself. It can be just to have fun. Also, to make the reader the centre and not the author. Part of the idea behind that was that the author isn't the great person who hands down his or her wisdom. The reader can be as much involved in the creation of the understanding of a text when one's reading it, which is why it's called creative reading. The idea that the reader is creative by reading the book and creating their own interpretation of it. Also, I've already said that one, to show that reading is creative. So they were the initial aims of reader development in the UK at the beginning. Early reader development techniques began in libraries, but were also mirrored and learned from bookshops as well. They included book presentation. In many libraries and bookshops, books were only presented so you could see the spines of the books, you couldn't see the book cover. And so libraries and bookshops began to have books showing so you could see the picture on the cover to attract readers, but also piles of books, because if there's a pile of book, it looks more interesting on a table. You may browse in a way that in the bookshop that you have just down the road. There's lots of books laid out that you can look at their covers first. Reading groups were very important, where people came together in libraries, bookshops, cafes, homes, and talked about that book that they'd read, the same book that they'd read. Events without authors, and also events with authors. When reader development began, authors were invited into libraries, and rather than just read from their work and answer questions in a very formal way, they were involved in a more engaged conversation where the author could be challenged about what they meant and even criticised by the readers. And many authors liked this, and many didn't. But it's for me, as an author, I find that approach very enjoyable. I'm pointing at the wrong place, aren't I? So later on, as reader development gained more momentum, other things happened. So reading guides were produced. A reading guide being a guide to things that you could possibly discuss, the themes or the characters of a book. A lot of these were felt to be quite academic, and so they were softened, and questions such as, how did this book make you feel? Did this book remind you of something that's happened to you in your life? Were asked, rather than discuss the philosophical background to the novel or something or such. Readers recommend is where readers or booksellers or librarians would be invited to write on a little card what book they'd enjoyed, and that might encourage someone else to try to read it. If you like this, was a further technique used. For instance, if you like reading Tolstoy, you might enjoy Dostoevsky, or if you enjoyed Charlotte Bronte, you might enjoy Jane Austen, something around that idea, to get readers to try new authors. Authors as equals, which I've already discussed really, and also food and wine evenings. In libraries, people used to like to come together and read books from a particular country. So, for instance, we may have read 1, 2, or 3 Italian novels or poetry, and then eaten Italian food and drunk Italian wine, and it's just a nice way of indulging in a culture in a more broad way. So they were some of the later techniques that were used. Right, reader development organisations. The main reader development organisations in the UK, certainly early on, were the Book Trust, the National Literacy Trust, Opening the Book, and the Reading Agency. And they deliver all sorts of schemes aimed at children, babies, adults, in schools, libraries, workplaces. And some of the things that I'm going to be speaking about now, some of the major projects that have happened in the UK over the past few years, have been run by those organisations. If you look at their websites, you'll be able to see the wealth of things that they're all doing. But they deliver the large amount of reader development in the UK at the moment. So I'm now going to discuss several major reader development projects that happened in the UK. These are some very large ones. A lot of these were funded by central government. Unfortunately, now there is much less money in the UK for this sort of scheme, but at the time there was a lot of money going towards reader development, so it was a very fertile time but now a lot of what happens is based on partnership, which Kathy will be speaking about later on in the conference. So, the National Year of Reading. There were two National Years of Reading, 1998 and 2007-8 in the UK. That was an opportunity for everybody to celebrate reading together. It was set up by the government with a view, really, to not just reading for us to read for pleasure, but to improve literacy. There are a large proportion of adults, 1 in 6, and a larger proportion of children in the UK who struggle with literacy, who don't have sort of a decent functional literacy. So this sort of scheme, looking at ways of making people enjoy reading more, was one of the ways of tackling that. So the National Year of Reading took place, both of them took place in libraries, bookshops and schools, and in other venues as well. And the national media supported it. It was based around things such as author events, activities, promotions, prizes, a range of different activities. And it was there was in both of the years where this took place, monthly themes were chosen. So there might be a theme around technology. There might be a theme about reading together with your children. And also there'd be a theme which particularly appealed to me around sport. And schools and libraries in particular tried to promote reading through these themes during the year. And there's much more information about that in a document that I've written but about reader development in the UK, which will be available at some point in the future. But these were very successful, the National Year of Reading. In particular, they set off a lot of other people trying other projects in the future. So there were many things organised around by councils and by publishers. But this led to many other projects taking part, in particular many other partnerships, because during the National Year of Reading people worked together. So a library would work with a bookshop, would work with a publisher, would work with a newspaper. And this led to lots more partnerships carrying on because people enjoyed working together and enjoyed promoting reading together. I put a lot of what happened since 1998 down to the National Year of Reading kick-starting things for people. Bookstart is a hugely important reader development scheme in the UK, and I understand that there has been something similar in South Korea. Bookstart tries to address the problem that many parents don't read with their children. Many parents don't know how to read with their children. So books are given free in the UK to children via their parents at the age of roughly 6 months and 3 years old. And they reach 90% of the population. They're given to the children via their health visitors or via librarians. And it's a really good way of trying to reach everybody. As well as giving free picture books to children, the health visitors and the librarians give also advice to the parents on how to read with their children. So there'll be a booklet about how should you read a book to a 6-month-old child. A lot of parents in the UK, unfortunately, are not confident about reading with their children. They don't think it's important. They think that is what the school should do. Whereas, as we know, a parent reading with a child is a wonderful way of introducing reading and literacy to a child, but it's also a wonderful way of spending time with your child. And I love reading to my daughter, although I do less so now she's 9. She prefers to read independently a little more. But Bookstart has been really important. So the books are given, also advice to the parents on how to read. In particular, read in silly voices, read slowly, read in a clear voice. Just advice, or ask the child, certainly when they're a bit older, ask the child what they think of what you've read to them. And this is the advice that was given out. And some research has been done that shows that this has had a very good impact on literacy. I think because it's been running for 10 to 12 years, or perhaps even more now, it has had a positive impact on literacy across the United Kingdom, and it was funded nationally by the government. It was run by the Book Trust, but it also had major sponsors, in particular earlier on, a supermarket chain called Sainsbury's. Right, next one. World Book Day has been another really successful scheme in the United Kingdom. It's an annual celebration of books. Every child through their school is given a £1 book voucher. They're encouraged either to buy one of 6 books which cost £1. They can use their £1 book voucher on another book as well. And it's a way of getting children, getting books into homes. There is I think it's roughly 1 in 10 homes in the UK don't have books in them, so it's a way of getting books into those homes, but also a way of getting people to go into bookshops to try them out. When I began reading about the age of 17, I was terrified of going into bookshops, and I meet children every week that won't go in a bookshop because they feel intimidated, and this is a way of maybe encouraging people to go into bookshops. Other things happen at World Book Day. Most schools in the UK, we had World Book Day on the first Thursday in March. Most schools, children will be encouraged to dress up as their favourite literary characters, which encourages conversations. Who are you? What book is that? Oh, I might read that book. It's a way of getting people talking about books. But also there's major activities such as there's a website, and many famous authors speak on this website. There's a sort of literature festival that goes online, but also these online book events are broadcast in cinemas and on television screens as well. So World Book Day has been superb, and it would take me a whole hour to describe it in full. World Book Night happens towards the end of April, and that really is an opportunity. This is aimed at adults. I suppose World Book Day is aimed more at children. World Book Night is aimed at adults. 10,000 books are given away during that night. People volunteer to give books away. They choose their favourite books, and they find people to give them as a gift in workplaces, in city centres, on trains, anywhere, and they give the books to people and tell them why they think it would be a good book for them to read. Fortunately, the publishing industry supports this really well, as they do World Book Day, and they give the books to people for free to give out. And it's another really good scheme that's aimed at, in this case, more at adults than children. And this, I suppose I'm trying to give you a flavour of all the different schemes that have led to reader development being such a success in the UK. The Big Read was something that was run through the BBC, and it was about, I think it was about 10 years ago now, and it was a chance for the UK to vote for its favourite book. The BBC, the main national broadcaster in the UK, broadcast loads of programmes, and they got celebrities to champion different books. And the UK voted, hundreds of thousands of people voted for which was their favourite book. And this created discussions, arguments and disagreements, which and led to people discussing, rather than discussing soap operas on the bus or in the staff room, got them discussing books instead. So that was another good scheme, Big Read. The Children's Laureate scheme has also been wonderful, in my opinion. In the UK, we've had a poet laureate for many centuries, or at least decades, and the poet laureate is a poet who represents the national feeling, I suppose, and is charged to write poetry about major events and also raise the profile of poetry. But we now have a children's laureate every 2 years, and as you can see, there's a list of the children's authors there who have done the role. Every 2 years, a children's author spends 2 years championing reading and using their high profile to do that. So they do a number of things. They'll create schemes and prizes and activities. So Anne Fine, when she did it, she created book plates that children could put into their books to give them a sense of ownership over their books. Michael Rosen, the poet, he came up with an idea for a new book prize for children's books that are funny, which is called the Roald Dahl Children's Book Prize now. And it's about, it was a prize particularly for humour books for children. So each author brings their own angle and their own way of looking at reading. And recently, Julia Donaldson, the Children's Laureate at the moment, she's been creating debate. There's a big problem in the UK at the moment that libraries are getting closed. Hundreds of libraries are closing. Lots of librarians are losing their jobs. Money for books and money for other things in libraries are being chopped because of the government cuts. And it's a massive, massive problem to anyone who cares about reading and trying to get books to people who can't afford to buy books. And she has been creating debate and stirring things up to try and stop the government causing that to happen, in my opinion. So the Children's Laureate has been a wonderful large-scale scheme based around the celebrity and popularity of major authors. The Summer Reading Challenge is another project where one thing that's been identified is during the 6-week summer holiday for schools, children's reading drops, their reading levels drop slightly, their enthusiasm for reading because they're not at school engaging with reading and writing every day, so their education suffers because of that. So the Summer Reading Challenge was created through public libraries to challenge them to read 6 books during those summer holidays. And every year, hundreds of thousands of children do this. There are prizes and certificates. I take my daughter to do it every year, and she loves the fact that she gets little prizes, and she likes the certificate she receives. And she likes the challenge, that the word is challenge. She likes the challenge of reading 6 books during the summer holiday. And it's something she asked me about, is it going to happen? And because hundreds of thousands of children are doing it, teachers tell me that a lot of children are coming back to school not having lost a slight amount of their ability and enthusiasm for reading and writing during the summer. It's also a really good way of getting children into libraries during the summer holidays. Libraries need as many people visiting them as possible to keep them there. And millions of children visit the libraries because of this scheme, and lots of authors do author events so they can meet children directly. So the Summer Reading Challenge, that's run by the Reading Agency and is a very popular scheme indeed. Book prizes, I've sort of touched on book prizes already, but there are many book prizes in the UK. There's the Man Booker, there's the Costa, there's the Funny Prize, the Roald Dahl Funny Prize. There are many other children's book prizes. These have been supported by libraries and bookshops because they create a buzz around books. People argue about which they think should be the victorious book in a book prize. The shortlists create debate, and the media always follow book prizes. If you want to get newspaper coverage about reading and literacy that isn't bad news, i.e. children are getting worse at reading every day, which is often the news story, a book prize is a good way of doing it, and it highlights a range of books or a genre that gets reading onto the news pages, that gets debates on radio, and gets people going into bookshops and libraries to buy and borrow books. Many local authorities also now create their own book prizes. So, for instance, where I live in Calderdale in Yorkshire, 6 books are chosen, and schools all over the area where I live read the books, and the children vote for which they think is the best book. And then all the authors come and sit at the front and are told who's won, and then the rest of us, which is usually often me, applaud the winner. And it's a lovely way of getting children to... A lot of book prizes are voted for by important people, people from the literary establishment, and more book prizes now, especially these local ones, are voted for by children, and children absolutely love being able to vote for books, and they like to meet the authors as well. And this is a really good way of empowering children to feel that they have a voice in that. The book prizes are another strand of reader development, I feel, in the UK looking at it broadly. Sorry. Right. Reading partners. Reading partners is hopefully going to stay there. It is. This is a scheme where publishers and libraries work together. I was very fortunate. I ran the Reading Partners project for the Reading Agency for the first 4 years. And it was 12 publishers, 12 major publishers like Penguin, HarperCollins, Random House, who worked together with the libraries, all of the libraries in the UK, to help make libraries more vibrant and exciting places by donating books, by bringing authors to come and do events, by creating posters that libraries could use to promote reading. Readers were also allowed to take part in this as well. So it was a coming together of libraries and publishers, and it was what publishers wanted to do was create word of mouth. They saw that libraries were creating word of mouth for books through reader development, through book groups, and through the way that libraries promote books. And publishers obviously wanted their books to be the ones that were having the word of mouth about them. So publishers came together with libraries, and so in return for all the free books, author activities and posters and other things that were provided, the publishers in return got access to readers. And one publisher joined me all over the UK talking to reading groups about their book covers, which book covers did the reading groups like and which didn't they like. They came to Northern Ireland with me. They went to the Shetland Islands, which is a very remote collection of islands high north above Scotland, and they talked to readers about what they liked and didn't like. So it was really another good way where readers could influence publishers and how they published books. Because reader development isn't just libraries and bookshops, it's publishers as well. It's publishers publishing in attractive ways to make more people want to read. The 6-book challenge is a scheme which is aimed at adults. I suppose it's a bit like the summer reading challenge for children. The 6-book challenge is for adults. 1 in 6 adults in the UK don't have a functional level of literacy. And this is a way of dealing with that. Adults are challenged, as children are, to read 6 books or newspapers or magazines. And there is often a theme around it. So this year, the 6-book challenge is going to be based around rugby league, and the Rugby League World Cup is in the UK later this year. And so a lot of the publicity will be a partnership between this World Cup tournament and the 6-book challenge, which is run by the Reading Agency. The way of approaching adults, which may not have a high level of literacy, isn't always through like libraries and the conventional ways of approaching people for reader development. So, for instance, the 6-book challenge is run through workplaces and by unions and other ways of approaching adults, so that often it's very hard to get an adult to go to a library to try and improve their literacy, to try and improve their reading. But if you do it through their workers' union or their workplace, it's a way of approaching them to make it less intimidating for them. And this scheme is very successful and engages thousands of readers every year and produces very positive results for raising their literacy levels, which is important for them and also important for their children, that their parents are literate and are not intimidated by reading. This is the last slide that I'm going to discuss. I'm sorry about the PowerPoint sheet that you've been handed. This Reading Well is a scheme where, for a long time in the UK, there's been something called bibliotherapy, where libraries have given books to people to help them feel better if say they're depressed or if they're recovering from an illness. And bibliotherapy is a way of saying that reading can be good for you as a complementary medicine towards drugs and surgery, I suppose. And so this has been going on for a while. But now it's just a new scheme called Reading Well has been launched, where doctors now are working with libraries to prescribe books for people. So, for instance, if somebody has a physical or a mental illness, books are actually prescribed to them. So that includes books, sort of self-help books, such as How Not to Worry, a book like that, but also fiction as well, fiction that may make someone feel better about the world or better about themselves. And doctors are actually, as well as giving people prescriptions for drugs, they're giving them prescriptions to go down to the library and get a book which will help them. There is a book list of fiction and a book list of non-fiction as well. That is a very swift sort of introduction to some of the major reader development projects in the United Kingdom. I've written a document for the British Council in Korea, giving that in much more detail in a much more easily paced way, and that hopefully that has all the links on it as well, so you'll be able to see more about the projects that I've been discussing. But thank you very much for listening to me, and I shall see you later. Thank you.